Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Let's Talk Racing, a new motorsport show created and hosted by me, Julian Quintero Verano. And today we're going to be talking about one of the most exciting weekends in motorsport. We're going to be having breakfast in Monaco, lunch in Indianapolis, and of course dinner in Charlotte as we have the triple header weekend. The Monaco Grand Prix in Formula One, the Indy 500 in IndyCar, and the Coke 600 in NASCAR. It's going to be a fantastic weekend of racing. I'm really looking forward to it. I know a lot of you listening as well are looking forward to this fantastic weekend of motorsport. We're going to be talking about Monaco qualifying, predictions for how that weekend is going to turn out. We're going to talk about the Indy qualifying results and the potential results of the Indy 500, and we're going to talk about the Coke 600 and what all that could mean. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into it and talk some Formula One. This season's been fantastic. I've been able to watch every single race. I've stayed up super late. It's been a crazy period of time to be able to sit down and watch all of these races, but it's been a treat almost every single weekend this year. In terms of the Grand Prix, we've had 3 different winners. In terms of just general events, we've had 4. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton won in China in the sprint, but apart from that, it's all been Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, and Max Verstappen. More specifically, Oscar Piastri, he rattled off 3 wins in a row. He's been fantastic so far this season, and he leads the Drivers' Championship, and that's fantastic to see here for Oscar Piastri. He leads the way ahead of his teammate Lando Norris in that superior McLaren Mercedes. Max Verstappen sits 3rd. George Russell sitting 4th, a bit off the pace, but still up there. And then we start getting into the kind of middle of the pack, which is crazy to say for Ferrari. They're not necessarily a middle of the pack team, but Charles Leclerc sits at 61 points, Antonelli at 48, Albon at 40, Hamilton at 53. So we're starting to see like a division here in terms of who it is at the top, and it's going to be those McLarens, Max Verstappen and George Russell potentially fighting for a championship, and then we have everyone else kind of fighting for the rest of the positions. And I think it's going to be great to see throughout this year. Who knows if there's going to be more changes in packages. We know that the new regulations are coming in for 2026. So how much are these teams really going to invest? Are we going to see Ferrari fully fall off the pace because they're going to go fully into development for their 2026 car? Is Mercedes going to do that? I think that's a big aspect. There's been a lot of rumors that Mercedes power unit might be the best one in the new regulations. We saw that happen once before back in the turbo hybrid era beginning, so we'll see if that ends up happening again. But regardless, it's become a 3-horse race, and it's been a 3-horse race recently with Norris, with Piastri, with Verstappen, and we head into Monaco. It's going to be a fantastic weekend to see who really can live up to expectations, who's going to be the driver out front, who's going to be the one leading the charge. We know that in Monaco, usually if you're the car that ends up qualifying on pole, you're the driver out front. You're the one that's going to command the pace. It's been historically noted, and it's something that we've seen over and over again. The pole position, track position is king here at Monaco. It is the smallest track on the schedule for a reason. And the FIA decided to make this a bit more interesting this weekend for one big aspect, and that is they've made it a mandatory 2-stop race. So the race that we're going to be seeing this upcoming weekend in Monaco is going to be a mandatory 2-stop. You're going to have to stop twice, and that is going to throw an absolute wrench in everyone's plans. Monaco has historically been a 1-stop race with the new Pirelli tire regulations. That's been the whole aspect. That's why track position has been king. The fact that you're not going to be getting a ton of opportunities through your pit crew. It's going to be almost entirely settled on how you race on the track. And this time, though, with a mandatory 2-stop, they made it mandatory. I can't stress that enough. The fact that the FIA came out, Formula One came out and said, look, you have to stop twice. You got to run a strategy. It's going to be interesting to see what people run. Are we going to see people try to go deep into the race, maybe get a pit stop late while getting a big advantage? Who knows? Are we going to be seeing people stop early? We saw in this past weekend at Emilia-Romagna, yes, it was because of the fact that there was a lot more tire wear, but Esteban Ocon came on really early. Are we potentially going to see a car stop really early? They're going to be super far back early, but then from there, they're just going to have clean air. They're going to push as hard as they can and potentially come out for that second round of pit stops. Who knows if that's going to be it? And of course, there's the factor of weather. Everything I've seen is shaking up to be a dry race, which I think is going to be fine. But regardless, I'm really excited to see what tire strategies and what general strategies we're going to be seeing from the teams this upcoming weekend. That always ends up throwing a wrench in everyone's plans. We saw it again in Imola. People weren't anticipating the tires wearing the way that they did, and as a result of that, we saw the two-stop. Of course, there was a safety car. Of course, there was a VSC as well. And so in that aspect, in that nature, it was a bit of a chaotic Imola Grand Prix. But Monaco, we know what it can bring us. We know what it can do in this mandatory two-stop. I think it's a good move for Formula One if you really want to try to fix the racing, because Monaco has been a track that, if we're talking purely for the visuals, it's not been a great race. It's been a boring spectacle the past couple years. The order remains the same almost entirely. Passing nigh impossible with the size of these cars. Most of the overtakes that you see are either down the front stretch heading into Sandoval, or we're going to be seeing a lot of it being because of pit stops. That's been a big aspect of why it's been hard to pass in Monaco, why it's not been a fun race. You're throwing in 2 mandatory stops, and as a result of that, we're going to be seeing new strategies. We're going to be seeing drivers have to potentially duke it out. We might see cars push it a bit harder because one of them is going to be on soft tires early. They want to try to gain as much ground. Someone else is going to be on a hard set. They're going to try to go a bit longer. And so we might see some people holding other people up. And I think that could be a fantastic aspect to this weekend. Monaco weekend, regardless, is always one of the best. The drivers love it. And it's just the spectacle of it. Yes, the racing, as I mentioned, lacks at times. It's not ideal in some aspects. But if you ask me, spectacle-wise, what's the best weekend in Formula One? It has to be the Monaco Grand Prix. So let's talk about the most important part of the weekend, the part that everyone focuses on, and that is qualifying. Qualifying has been nothing short of necessary for teams this season. If you're not on pole, if you're not putting yourself in the best possible position to execute at Monaco, if you're not starting on the front row, I hate to say it, you really are squandering your chances of winning. And maybe the pit stop will change that. Maybe that'll make this aspect of it a bit different. Who knows? But either way, I think it's just going to be the way it turns out. It's going to matter who ends up being on pole. So how do I think qualifying is going to shake up? This year we've seen a bit all over the place for qualifying for each driver. In terms of the midfield especially, we've seen last weekend alone, the Aston Martins were super far up. Williams, they have been showing a lot of pace from the midfield. Carlos Sainz topped the session. But then you have the McLaren boys, and then you have the Red Bull boys, and specifically Max Verstappen. And they've been fast all year, regardless of the weekend, regardless of how it goes. Yes, that Red Bull has been a diva to drive, but Max has been able to get every single result out of it. And then you look at Lando, you look at Oscar. They've been the cars to stop. And I think the safest bet would be, one of those McLarens will start from pole. That is a really, really safe assumption to make. We see George Russell, Kimi Antonelli. Kimi Antonelli put it on pole in Miami during the sprint. And that goes to show the young man's pace. He's going to want to have a better weekend following the events of Imola. We'll see if he's able to do that. George has been fantastic in qualifying as well. He's booked himself in the top 3 multiple times. But all this to say, who do I think is going to be leading the way in qualifying? What I think is going to be the top qualifier this weekend? I think it's going to be Lando Norris. Lando's been fantastic this year in qualifying. He's struggled a little bit in the most recent weeks. But I think in Monaco, he's going to really, really bring it. He's going to show Oscar who's boss, and he's going to put it on pole. I think Lando's going to come in this weekend and really demonstrate his talents. He's going to be able to show off the type of driver that he is. And I really, really hope that he's able to capitalize on that in the race. We know the famous Lando Norris is a bottler jokes, that he isn't able to maintain a lead. That's a big aspect to it. But in the end, I think Lando Norris is such a talented driver. I think that he is a phenomenal performer, and I think this is the race that we're going to see his season begin. He won the Open in Australia, and he's kind of floundered here, there, but he's still second in the championship. Like, is he really here to compete? I think this weekend in Monaco, he's going to come out, he's going to put it on pole, and he's going to be really, really good in the race. So, who do I think is going to start on pole? I'm going to say it's Lando Norris. I think Lando Norris is also going to be the race winner. It's really, really hard to not bet on the guy who starts in pole to win at Monaco, and I think this year will be no different, even with the tire strategy, even with that aspect. I think we'll see a big shakeup in the middle of the pack. I think we'll see maybe a potential accident or something that brings out the safety car. But at the front of the grid, unless we see an absolute disaster class from McLaren in the pit stop phases, I think Lando Norris is going to be having it in his pocket when it comes to this race weekend. I think that he's going to be the main guy, easily. Nothing else to really say on that front. Who do I think is going to be a disappointing driver this weekend? It's been hard to think about who do I think is going to be a disappointment. And as good as he is as a driver, I don't think Red Bull is going to be suited to the streets of Monaco the way McLaren are. I know Ferrari is definitely going to be bringing a package so Charles can compete. Ferrari's going to be having a good one. Mercedes has been good. That Red Bull has been very hit or miss, and Max drags it in from the worst positions imaginable to be able to finish in a good spot. But heading into this weekend, I feel that Max, coming off a win in Imola, he's going to continue that fluctuation of being the most dominant car, and then he's going to be kind of floundering third, fourth. And this weekend, I think he's going to finish way, way off. It's going to be, I believe, like it was the Bahrain weekend, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes, it is, where he finished sixth. He was nowhere in that race. He was very off the pace. I think that's what's going to happen with Max Verstappen. I think he's going to have another disappointing weekend. He's going to finish 6th, 7th. We're going to see him complain a lot on the radio about the car. I don't think Red Bull's pit stops are really going to do him any major favors on strategy either. And I think just Red Bull's going to struggle a lot with the traffic of this track. I think they're going to struggle incredibly. Maybe I get proven wrong. Heck, maybe we can get a Yuki masterclass if Red Bull's really on it this weekend. Fingers crossed. Gotta love Yuki Tsunoda. I think he's been good. That Red Bull obviously is not the cream of the crop anymore. You can't be expecting him to be at the front. Yes, he's miles off of Max, but this past weekend he drove 20th to 10th, Yuki. He's been finishing consistently in the bottom of the points, which isn't what you want to hear from your driver. You want them pushing further up. But if you talk about where this Red Bull is, sadly enough, that's kind of where it's supposed to be. And Yuki's still getting to grips with the car. Max has just been overperforming like crazy. But I think Monaco is going to be a different weekend. I think Max struggles. I think Red Bull struggles as a whole. But I'm going to say specifically Max. I think you can expect him to be around the middle of the points, finishing 6th, 7th in this race. Maybe Yuki at the bottom of the points if it comes to it. But, I think this weekend is going to be McLaren dominated. I think Oscar's going to be towards the front. Maybe one of the Mercs, the Ferraris, can get in the mix further up with strategy choice. And that leads to my good surprise of the weekend, and that's going to be Williams. And it's going to be specifically Carlos Sainz. Now, this is the most biased I've been in a while. I've been a Williams fan for most of my life. I've loved Williams. They're a fantastic organization, but they fell off massively several years ago. They were at the bottom. James Vowles comes in. They're fixing the program. This year they bring in Carlos Sainz, who has been a fantastic, fantastic driver, won races at Ferrari. And now he's going to be here. Now he's at Williams. And he struggled a bit to get to tune with the car. But this past weekend in Imola, he got messed up by the Williams strategy call. That I can say for sure. But he was running fantastically early stages of the race. Qualifying, he really showed his pace, that he can put it up there with the big boys. And I think one of the Williams, either Alex or Carlos, is going to finish on the podium this weekend. I think it's going to be a Williams podium weekend in Monaco. I'm going to say it's going to be Carlos because I think it's just his weekend. He's been due. You talk about how the season started off for Carlos. It was slow. He had a lot of misfortune. He's not been able to get it in the way that he wanted. But if you ask me, he's been turning it up slowly but surely. This Williams car has become consistently the 5th best car on the grid. They're starting to make a case maybe for being the fourth best car on the grid, considering the discrepancy we're seeing at Red Bull. They're challenging the Ferraris week in, week out. Williams has looked fantastic, and I know some people are saying I need to temper my feelings. They might not be up there. That's fair. They might not be as dominant as it comes in that aspect. But in my opinion, I do believe that Williams this weekend, they've been showing pace all year, and I think they're going to demonstrate it here in Monaco. The track, it doesn't have a lot of straights, which is what usually favors this Williams car, but I think that they're going to have it resolved. I think Carlos is going to prove himself very massively, and it's due. It's due. A Williams podium is my bold prediction for this weekend, and I think that that's going to be how this weekend turns out. So, in conclusion for this Formula One portion here, I'm excited for the mandatory two-stop. I think Lando Norris is going to start on pole. I think Lando Norris is going to win the Monaco Grand Prix. If I'm going to give the rest of the podium, I think it's going to be Norris first, Piastri finishing second, and Carlos Sainz finishing third, with Carlos being my surprise of the weekend. And I think Max Verstappen is going to struggle here in Monaco. So who knows where that ends up going. Maybe I am on the money. Maybe I am miles off. Who could see it? Who knows? Who knows in that sense? But let's get into talking about IndyCar. From one motorsport to another, one open wheeler to another. We're headed to the most historic race in motorsport, arguably, apart from Monaco, and that is the Indy 500. When you talk about the big races, there is a reason why it's part of the Triple Crown being the Indy 500, the Monaco Grand Prix, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Fun fact for anyone listening at home, just because it's one of my favorite things to mention, there's two active drivers that still do racing that can be the first Triple Crown winner since, I believe it was Graham Hill back in the 60s. And that is Juan Pablo Montoya, who needs to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans. He has won Monaco, and he has also won the Indy 500 twice. And Fernando Alonso, who will not be trying anything crazy to try to race this weekend at Indy. He will be just racing at Monaco. He won't be trying again like he had in years previous when he was at Alpine. And when he was, I believe, at McLaren, he was trying it as well. I think specifically when he was at McLaren, he was trying the Indy 500. That's the one that he's missing. He's won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So, we'll see if any other car ends up coming close at some point of making a Triple Crown run, but I highly doubt it with how specialized motorsport is these days, with how many drivers end up staying in their lanes. It's really rare to see a driver hop on over from one series to the next. And we'll be talking more about this in a bit, not specifically for the Triple Crown, but later on we'll talk about double duty a bit more. But returning here now to IndyCar to talk about this season. Two words, Alex Palou. Alex Palou this season in IndyCar has been nothing short of exceptional. He has been a phenomenal driver. He's a three-time champion. You come into the season saying, can he make it 4? Is this going to be his year? And what does he do? He starts 8th and wins at St. Petersburg. He starts 3rd and wins at Thermal Club. Doesn't win the race at Long Beach. Doesn't win the one at Long Beach, but if I remember correctly, he came pretty close. He finished second, I want to say, at Long Beach. Yes, he did. He finished second at Long Beach. And, I mean, what else can you really say in that aspect? Came second. And then from there, Barber Motorsport, Spark in Alabama, wins it. And then 2 weeks ago at the IMS here at Indy, before the road course, he wins that race from pole. Alex Palou, take a bow. This has been one of the most impressive starts to a season I've ever seen. IndyCars, compared to Formula One, Formula One is a talking point where everyone's like, oh, Formula One is just who's the top 2 drivers, and you'll see only those 2 cars, 3 cars win throughout the season. Maybe a surprise win here or there. IndyCar, from what I've experienced in my life, you usually see a variety of winners. You'll see the same dudes towards the front of the pack, but it'll be a rotation. You'll see Scott Dixon win one week, right? You'll see Rinus VK win the next week. I know, man, that might be a bit unbelievable considering how his season's been going. But you see Pato Award win the week after that. You see that level of variety. This season, we're not seeing that. We're seeing Alex Palou respectfully dog-walking the entire IndyCar grid. Kyle Kirkwood won in Long Beach. Good for him. He had Alex Palou breathing down his neck. Palou's lowest finish this season is second. It's not been one race. It's not been two races. It's not been three. We've had 5 races so far on the IndyCar schedule. And Alex Palou has finished first in all but one of them. And he finished second in that one. And it wasn't like he had a bad outing. He finished second. Can anyone dethrone Alex Palou? I think that's the big question in IndyCar right now as we head into the Indy 500. Surely there's a lot of hype for Alex Palou to finally win and be able to kiss the bricks, drink the milk. I think this might be his year. Who knows? But if you're talking about form, you can't not bet on Alex Palou. He's been phenomenal. And, that's that aspect of it this weekend. It's just crazy. I don't really know what else to say in that front. But from there, let's talk about Indy 500 qualifying. Obviously, qualifying for anyone who's watching at home is a 2-day spectacle, a whole weekend of qualifying for the Indy 500. If I remember correctly, there was one car that did not qualify. It was Jacob Abel who did not make it to the Indy 500. So that is absolutely a travesty for him. A lot ended up happening in qualifying. Team Penske had 2 cars fail a technical inspection, which actually led to them firing a bunch of people, including Tim Cindric, father of Austin Cindric, which is massive news for Team Penske. It might have massive ramifications in the future, but for now, who knows where it's going to go for Team Penske. Newgarden and Power both disqualified, or they both failed a technical inspection during Fast 12, so they'll be starting 11th and 12th. Scott McLaughlin early on ended up crashing, and he ends up starting 10th. But the big story here are the top 2 cars, in my opinion, for qualifying. On pole position, Robert Schwartzman. Robert Schwartzman is a rookie, and he has been a driver that's kind of been in limbo, was a Ferrari Academy driver for a while, raced in F2, was pretty good in F2, didn't get a seat in F1, despite testing there multiple times. Maybe a move to FE wasn't his cards for Robert Schwartzman. Maybe he was going to be a testing wilderness driver like Felipe Drugovich. Maybe that was going to be his future. But instead, Schwartzman ended up signing in IndyCar for the Prema team. He raced for Prema in F3. He raced for Prema in F2. Prema said, you know what, we're going to actually make the jump. We're not going to jump to Formula 1. We can't do that. But we're going to make the jump to IndyCar. We're going to have our own team across the pond and I say across the pond the other way, in the United States, in IndyCar. We're going to be having our own team in Prema. And our inaugural drivers, we're going to be having Callum Ilott, who was also another guy who raced in the lower formulas for a while. But we're going to be having Robert Schwartzman. And Robert Schwartzman, he's always been a very interesting case as a driver. Who knows where he would have been. A lot of what-ifs for him if opportunities just swayed his way. But instead, he's here. And this season in IndyCar, he's been okay. He's not been anything crazy. He's just been there, really. That's respectfully how it's been for Robert Schwartzman. He sits 24th in points. He's towards the bottom half on points, and that's that of the 27 cars that usually have raced this season, of no part-times, nothing like that. He's 24th. He is beating his teammate by 7 points in Callum Ilott, but Prema's not been fantastic. And so to sit through this weekend where we get a bunch of new cars coming in for the weekend, we're seeing Ed Carpenter come in. Helio Castroneves is going to be racing this weekend. Tony Kanaan thought about racing a bit this weekend. He didn't end up doing it. Kyle Larson racing. A lot can happen. A lot can happen here. And in the end, we see Robert Schwartzman put it on pole. And that's not something that he's been doing this year. So, you know what? Hats off to Robert Schwartzman. Hats off to him. He's been a phenomenal driver in the past. He's still young, and this is his first ever oval race. First ever time racing on an oval. He's the first rookie to start on pole at the Indy 500 in 43 years. So, everything will be pressure on his shoulder, but he will have the best seat in the house come Sunday from the Indy 500. So we'll see how Robert Schwartzman does there. Second to him is a name that I love to see here. Two-time Indy 500 winner and a streets will never forget driver in Formula One, Takuma Sato. Takuma Sato isn't racing this season in IndyCar, and he's not racing full-time. He's racing for the 500. He's trying to make it 3 500s in his career. And you look at the other drivers that are racing one-offs. Ed Carpenter's 16th, right? Kyle Larson, who we'll be talking about in a bit, he's 21st. Helio Castroneves, who's a phenomenal driver, multiple championships, IndyCar legend, he's starting 25th. Ryan Hunter-Reay, 27th. Jack Harvey, 28th. Marco Andretti himself, 31. That's where they're at, right? And then you take Takuma Sato. And Takuma Sato racing for Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan, RLL. He's starting second. And the time that he had set for qualifying on this past Sunday, it looked like he was going to get pole. Schwartzman pinched him to it right at the buzzer, right towards the end. But it looked like Takuma Sato was going to start on pole. And it just goes to show how much of a legend Takuma Sato is, how good of a driver he is. He's a phenomenal driver. He's sat down, given it everything. His career in Formula One didn't pan out, but he came over to the States, became a very, very good IndyCar driver, two-time Indy 500 winner. And as a Japanese driver, you don't really see many Japanese drivers in IndyCar at all. So the fact that he was able to do that, it's really, really big for him. He's the pride and joy of Japanese motorsport, if you ask me. Growing up as a little kid, I remember him racing at BAR. It's primarily through the DVDs my dad had. He raced at BAR Honda. He raced at Jordan. But now Takuma Sato, he's back. He's old. He's an old man, but he's racing and giving it his all here for the Indy 500. And he's starting second. So that's going to be fantastic to see. Rest of the grid here, Pato O'Ward starting third, Scott Dixon starting fourth, Rosenqvist fifth, Alex Palou starting a lowly sixth. By his standards, it's really low, but who knows? David Maluka seventh, Christian Lundgaard eighth, Marcus Ericsson ninth, and the Penske triplets of McLaughlin, Newgarden, and Power at 10, 11, 12. So how do I feel about this race? Let's talk about it. A lot can happen at IndyCar. We've seen races where Juan Pablo Montoya drove through the field from super far back, won it. We've seen cars towards the front dominate. Who knows who's going to be? And you might want to look at cars that have previously won the Indy 500. That I think might be a big aspect to see who's going to be dominating this weekend. Who's going to be towards the front. That's always an aspect to sit and talk about. But, who do I think is going to win this? And is it cheating to say Alex Palou with how good he's been? He was the fastest on Saturday. On Saturday during the first half of qualifying, he was the fastest. He was able to set phenomenal times. He made it into the Firestone 6, the Fast 6. He's a fantastic driver. We've seen it this year. Is this his year where he finally wins the 500? Do we see Pato O'Ward, who's starting third, come home with the 500? Does Sato take home his third? Does Joseph Newgarden three-peat? He's starting 11th. We haven't even talked about that. Joseph Newgarden starting 11th. It's a shame that they got disqualified because Joseph Newgarden is pushing and fighting for a three-peat here at Indianapolis, and we'll see if he gets that. If he ends up pulling it off, he's not starting super far back. 11th isn't crazy. One tire strategy going his way, and all of a sudden you see the Team Penske Chevrolet at the front. Boom. Who knows? But if you're going to ask me who do I think is going to win the Indy 500, I'm going to say it's Scott Dixon. He starts fourth. Scott Dixon, known to be a closer, known to be a phenomenal driver. And, Scott Dixon he's been around my entire life. It's crazy the longevity of Scott Dixon. He's been a driver who has really been able to excel at every aspect. He's a 6-time IndyCar champion. He has the most wins by any active driver at 58. He's second all time. He's one of the most dominant IndyCar drivers ever. He's a legend. He hasn't won the Indy 500 since 2008. The last time the United States was in a recession, or heading into a recession, with the job market crash and that's what we're seeing right now, but the housing crash, that was 2008. Scott Dixon won the 500 that year. For the culture, Scott, you should win the 2025 one. But in all seriousness, what a story it would be if Scott Dixon, 17 years later, after winning his inaugural one, towards the start end of his career, when he was a bit younger, still had some experience, but still was a young guy. He started his IndyCar career in 2003, was in kart in 2001. That's big for him. In 2008, by then, he was already a bit of a veteran. He'd already been, but he was still a young guy. Now, he's the elder statesman of the grid in terms of full-time drivers. How poetic would it be? I think it would be fantastic if we see him win the Indy 500, and I think he will. That's going to be my prediction. He's starting 4th. I think Chip Ganassi is going to give him a good car, and he's going to outdrive his Chip Ganassi teammate in Alex Palou. But I think Scott Dixon is going to be the one who comes out on top and wins the Indy 500. Now, talking about the Indy 500, let's talk about something else that's happening. I hinted at it earlier, and that is double duty. So what is double duty, you're probably wondering at home. Double duty is racing the Indy 500 and then making the trip all the way out to Charlotte to race in the Coke 600. It's only been done by 2 drivers, but it's been done on multiple occasions by these drivers. Tony Stewart tried it in 99 and 2001. That's obviously very, very good. His best finish was in 99 at the Indy 500 where he finished 6th. In 2001 he finished 3rd in the Coke 600, but he has not been able to get anything better in both of those events in those 2 separate occasions. Robbie Gordon tried it in 97, in 2000, and then for 3 years in a row from 2002 to 2004. So it's been over 20 years since we've seen a driver try double duty. We'll see if Kyle Larson can pull it off. He qualified for the Indy 500. It seems that he is fully prepared to race the Indy 500, but this is a grueling task. You race 500 miles at Indianapolis. It's hectic. You're pushing hard. And then to stop that race and immediately get on a plane, fly all the way to Charlotte, strap into a stock car, and race the Coke 600, the longest race on the NASCAR schedule. I could not imagine it. It would be a crazy thing to attempt, and a lot of commendation needs to go to Kyle Larson for it, because he's a phenomenal driver. He's demonstrated it profoundly, and he qualified for IndyCar. He didn't make the Fast 12, so he wasn't really there on the Saturday. So he was able to travel on Sunday to be a part last week in North Wilkesboro for the All-Star race. This weekend, he's going to be racing Indy. We'll see if he's able to make it to Charlotte in time. I know Hendrick has stepped out and said that for the number 5 car, if Kyle Larson can't make it, it's going to be Justin Allgaier this weekend. So that's going to be a fun little thing to see happen if Larson decides, I can't do double duty. But if he's able to pull off the double duty, it doesn't matter where he finishes. I think Kyle Larson would have just shown so much grit to do it. But let's talk about the NASCAR portion now. Kyle Larson, from that note, what a driver he's been this season. He's been phenomenal. Obviously, he's won a championship already in NASCAR. He's been very consistent. Hendrick's been very consistent this year. But Kyle Larson, the most recent race that we had that wasn't the All-Star race, the one in Kansas, start to finish, flag to flag, every single stage dominated by Kyle Larson. And that's the way it won. Yes, there was contenders ended up spinning out, crashing out, had their problems, but Kyle Larson stayed stable and he won the race in Kansas. Kyle Larson has been phenomenal this year, and we'll see if he's able to keep it going. Kyle Larson, man. He's been a fantastic driver. And as we've seen it this year in NASCAR, he's currently the one leading the points standing. He leads the way by 35 over William Byron. He has 85 over Christopher Bell. So it just goes to show how good he is. 3 wins already this year and only 1 DNF. He's led the second most laps led this season has been by William Byron at 386. Kyle Larson has led 817 laps this year. Wow. There's no other way to put it. Kyle Larson's been phenomenal. He's been phenomenal. You look at this coming weekend at the Coke 600, Hendrick tends to do pretty well here. That's been a great aspect to see. But who knows where this weekend's going to go? NASCAR, as we know, has been a bit unpredictable with how it turns out. Joey Logano won this year. Austin Cindric won this year. Byron has 1 win. Hamlin has 2. But the 2 big guys have been Kyle Larson, who's going to be pulling double duty, and if he's able to win either the Indy 500 or the Coke 600, it just makes it a historic weekend. Or it's going to be Christopher Bell, who won last year in the Coke 600. He won it, the 2024 edition. He has 3 wins this year. He's been the best driver at Joe Gibbs. He's been phenomenal. And if he gets this win, he gets his 4th win on the year. And it just goes to show the level of talent that this driver has. I remember when Christopher Bell first started out, it was a bit messy for him. He was very, very cut and dry. I'll be honest, I always confused him with Eric Jones. But Christopher Bell was able to lock in, make himself a very, very consistent driver. In these past years, he's been in the championship fights. He's made it to the Final Four, the championship 4. And this year, he's showing to be a potential championship contender. He has the 2nd most playoff points out of any car. He's only trailing Kyle Larson. He's 3rd in general points in stages. And it just goes to show just how good Christopher Bell has been. If you want to talk about other cars that have been fantastic this year, Hendrick has been the team to watch. They have Larson in 1st, Byron in 2nd, Elliott sitting 4th, and Alex Bowman 8th in points. So that just goes to show how good this Hendrick team is. Can anyone really stop them? Who knows? They've been very, very good. Another one right here is Ryan Blaney. He's been phenomenal this year. He's been, despite being the only one of his teammates to not win a race this year, and the big part of that is the fact that he has 4 DNFs due to a lot of bad luck. Ryan Blaney has been phenomenal. He's been a fantastic driver, very consistent, always towards the front of the grid. And we'll see if he can get the win at the Coke 600. Tyler Reddick's also been very, very good. Alex Bowman, as I already mentioned, but he's been very consistent. Ross Chastain for Trackhouse, he's been a phenomenal addition for him. And he's just been a great driver. He's been phenomenal this year, and he's hopefully going to be able to keep that up. He's still hunting for that 1st win on the year, but he sits 11th in points. Bubba Wallace, 10th in points for 23-11. That's obviously fantastic to see. One of my favorite drivers this year, Carson Hocevar, he's been fun to watch. He's very off the pace. He's 19th in points. You know, that might be a big, it might be a bit of an issue, but I love Carson Hocevar. He's a very young driver. He's very, very fun to watch, and I really, really hope he's able to keep it going. But yeah, as we head further down, Chris Buescher, very consistent. He had that penalty that dropped him down massively in points. We'll see if he's able to just get a win to really pull himself up and get him back where he wants to be. But other than that, not much to really say about the drivers this weekend. So without further ado, how do I think it's going to go? Qualifying in NASCAR, it's always been who's the fastest, who gets it going. And, you know, if you ask me who I think is going to be the winner this weekend, it's not going to be who starts on pole, right? So I'm not going to go through the qualifying aspect of NASCAR. I think it's just going to be who I think is going to win. And the Coke 600 is known for breaking dry spells. It's a race of tenacity. It's a race about making it to the end. It's a race about survival. And it all depends on can you make it all the way to the end of the race. And that is just the luck that you have. So the 2 cars that I'm going to say I think are going to win this weekend, it's going to be either Ryan Blaney, who is a fantastic driver. He's been phenomenal this year. He's given it everything. He's given it everything he can. And I think this might be the weekend he finally breaks his duck. He breaks a massive winless drought that he's had. He breaks that for him. That would be big for him. He also clinches a playoff spot with the win and in system. I think this might be the week he finally gets it going, which would be really ironic considering all the things happening at Penske right now in IndyCar. They could really use some good news, seeing a win in the Coke 600, even a win in the Indy 500, but I think it would be more likely here in Charlotte for them to get the win, and I think it could be Ryan Blaney. The other guy that I think is my favorite to win is going to be Alex Bowman. When you're talking about survival, when you're talking about just finishing these races, Alex Bowman has been a fantastic driver, and that's just what he does. He's always around. He's always around. And he's had a bit of unfortune this year, but he's been a fantastic driver, very consistent, and I think he'll be the one to win for Hendrick. I think he'll get a win before Chase Elliott, and I think this might be his weekend here. Quiet, under the table, win the war of attrition, and as much as I would love to see Ryan Blaney win it, and I think that he's a very, very close second for me, I think my race prediction is going to go Alex Bowman. So, with that note, ladies and gentlemen, let me just give a quick rundown. I think Lando Norris is going to come out on top for McLaren at Monaco. I think it's going to be Scott Dixon winning his second ever Indy 500, his first one in almost 20 years. And I think it's going to be Alex Bowman finishing the day with the win at the Coke 600. Thank you so much for listening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back following this weekend to do a bit of a review of all three of these races. I'm not missing it out. I'm going to be sitting in my room watching all three of these races all weekend. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. You have a fantastic rest of your day wherever you are, and hopefully you'll be listening to the next time when we sit down and talk racing. I'm Julian Quintero Verano. See ya.